Alright people, what's going on? Space Cowboy here. Welcome back to the channel. Got another video for you guys today. Before we get started with today's video, please make sure to drop a like down below. It helps the channel out so much, and it's really easy to do. Also, subscribe if you're new here to get more Dallas Cowboys content from yours truly now and in the future. And finally, hit the notification bell to be notified when new content gets posted or I go live. So, I wanted to do a video on Mike McCarthy's most recent press conference because it's really like the first true press conference we have with him, with the team, and him actually interacting with the players. You know, he's had a couple press conferences, but now this is kind of like, okay, he's now establishing the football program, and we're now getting closer and closer to football. Now, assuming there will be a season, we're about 30 days away from the start of the NFL season. We're fastly approaching that. Now, I do want to say that I'm not thinking Mike McCarthy is going to be the perfect head coach. Of course, there are going to be mistakes that are made along the road. Everyone makes mistakes. We're all human, you know. So, there's that. But during that entire press conference and him taking those questions, it was just so much of a different vibe. The energy felt a lot better. It just felt different. And I understand it is different because it's a different guy, different coach, etc., etc. But what I mean by that is, like, there was no, oh, hey, how's it going, guys? None of that crap. It was just, yeah, all right, here to take your questions. And he answered them pretty good. You know, they were very substantive answers. And I'm not asking for him to answer every question completely honestly, because you want to try and keep stuff in your back pocket. You don't want to express what you're fully going to do. You know, don't want to give out those game plans. But it's still good that he's saying what we're going to do. And that's something that I wanted to see. Now, a couple notes that I wanted to take away from the press conference. First, he mentioned when it came to Dak, he said that I think Dak has done a great job with his time away, and really the whole group, the quarterback group, with the addition of Andy Dalton. You know, that was a huge thing for me because it's like he talked about how well, you know, oh, this is who we have in our quarterback room. So it's good to know, like, okay, like, he wants to have as good of a room as he can get. And I think that's what we should strive for, you know. And that's something that the Cowboys have not had. Remember, I've said for the longest time the Cowboys needed to invest in a solid backup. Now, whether they keep Andy Dalton as a backup for a couple more years, odds are no. But if they can develop some of the young guys, that'd be perfect. He mentioned how the whole language of the offense is changing in sense of not the passing game, but from what I'm hearing, the running game is going to see some changes to the language, and as well as some of the blockings, you know, the protection calls and stuff like that, which is something that is a bit contrary to what he said in I think February or January, I don't remember, but I know someone asked him, will the language be the same? And he said, well, you know, we're going to keep Kellen to try and keep things the same. And, you know, I'm not mad because at least, you know, he's willing to adapt. It's not like he's sitting and be like, no, we're going to do this. So it's good, you know, he's adapting, he's seeing what works and doesn't work. So there will be some different language going on with the calls and audibles and stuff like that. But it is important to note that, you know, hey, you know, this is maybe for the better because it's an adjustment for everybody. And it's funny because he didn't mention that. And it's because it's like, oh, you know, well, the language, and then it's also just what the times we're in. So it's good to know that, like, he also explained it, like, well, more or less that it was just, you know, he explained what changes were made. It's not like this just like, oh, we made some changes. You know what I mean? He went into specifics, which I do like. You know, but I don't need to know that all the time to get that kind of vibe. Now, obviously, like I mentioned, as I'm going through my notes, you know, McCarthy, you know, said he'd keep most of Jason Garrett's language, more so with Kellen Moore, just to, like, make the transition easier. And who knows, maybe as things go on, and maybe the language continues to change, but I doubt that. You know, McCarthy, you know, he's all about, oh, it's a learning experience for myself the most. You know, he likes Dak's personality. He's a lot of fun to be around. Stuff like that. You know, he talked about the rookie class. He thinks it's going to be an impressive one. Has a lot of promise. You know, and he loved what Cooper said about, You know, the Cowboys possibly having three. You know, that's the expectation to have three 1,000-yard receivers. That was another good thing. And you know, he also mentioned this. Really, the way the games play out and the performance and execution of players usually takes care of that. But yes, Zeke is a primary target for us as far as him touching the football, which is good. He also, if I recall, I don't think I have this in my notes, but he did mention the goal is to put players in the best position to succeed. That is something we haven't seen under the Jason Garrett tenure for the past, you know, decade we had with him. You know, it was a lot of we need the right type of guys to fit our, you know, scheme and stuff like that. With Mike McCarthy, it's all about give me the players and we're going to make this thing work around the players. And that is exactly what the Cowboys have needed to do. And it's something that's, you know, again, we can go on and on about. But I do believe that the whole progression of McCarthy coming in, assembling the coaching staff, the free agency, the draft, and here we are in the pre-training camp phase as we inch closer to the actual padded to training camp. Everything has gone so far fine in the coaching staff side. Now again, I do want to add this caveat that, listen, it's not foolproof. We don't know exactly what's going to happen with Mike McCarthy, right? We don't know what's going to happen. Is he going to be bad? And odds are, look, as you know, many people have said, you could look at Vach Lombardi. I've echoed the same sentiment. He does not have to be Bill Belichick. All he has to do is be better than Jason Garrett. Now, if that means we win on a more consistent basis, or that means like, okay, well, we might not make the playoffs consistently. We're about consistently winning between 9 or 8 to 10 wins a season. That's a step in the right direction, right? Because as we've talked as fans, the Dallas Cowboys have yet to. Usually, when it comes to a contender, you want to have a long-term success, right? You want to be like, I've also talked about this before on the channel, a Seattle Seahawks type of success where you're contending year in and year out. You continue to keep the ship going, and while you may not go to the Super Bowl every year, you still contend and win a couple games and some playoff games here and there. And that's what's important. So we look at that, and it's like, so the first step is developing consistency, right? This is a 5-year plan with Mike McCarthy, with what the roster we have now. We're in win-now mode. How far can we go in these next 5 years? Can we continue to build around this roster and just make sure that we keep the pieces intact, draft well, and keep the ship going? That's the first thing. And if we can do that on a more consistent, basis, that's great. Because then what ends up happening is then it will allow us to really see better development with our players as well as how we do in certain situations. So the first step is developing consistency. If we can develop that consistency, then we can maybe think about being a perennial championship contender. And who knows? In the first year, maybe we hit this thing out of the park and maybe we do go far. Or, like, I'm thinking, this is kind of my expectation is, hey, you win the division, you win a playoff game, maybe 2, and you go from there, okay? And for me, even if we do miss the playoffs, it really depends on how that comes about, right? I don't think this roster would miss the playoffs. It's a really good roster, but I can see this roster maybe at most getting to the divisional round and stopping there if things were to limit themselves. But once again, it's about taking baby steps, right? I've talked about dynasty, and that's not out of the realm of talk. It isn't, because if we look at the stepping stones that the Cowboys need to take on making a dynasty, they got one thing down. That's the drafting. They've been drafting pretty decent, very well, I would say, in some cases, over the past couple of years. There's some draft duds they've had, but overall, they've drafted pretty well to make sure that this thing keeps rolling, which is good. Okay. Another thing is that when it comes to the whole free agency thing, they're not going after the high-priced free agents. They're rather signing their own guys, which is another key thing. But I don't want to go on for too long. and I'll probably end this here. But as for my conclusion, I'm really liking what I'm seeing from Mike McCarthy and this staff. I really do think the Cowboys made a right decision on hiring Mike McCarthy as of right now. We'll see what happens, and who knows? We'll see how things go about. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please make sure to drop a like. Make sure to subscribe if you're new. Hit the notification bell. Thank you so much for reaching the end of this video. I'll see you guys in the future. Alright guys, peace out. Bye-bye.